Hello and welcome to the Slowerty Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Mike.
And I'm Alex.
And we absolutely had to hop on and do a quick episode to discuss the Everything Must Go experience at Luna Luna Forgotten Fantasy. But first, as always, the best way to keep up with us is to follow us on our socials. We're on just about every platform you can think of. And also recently, me and Alex got our own personal accounts on Blue Sky as well as the podcast. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you and hear from you. And before we get into Luna Luna, we do like to get into the news and notes from this week with Goose in our first segment, which is Hot Tea. And one of the bigger things that happened this week was Rick, of course, was playing at the Unbroken Chain event at the Cap on March 14th and March 15th, ended yesterday at the time of this recording, which was an event, of course, celebrating the life of Phil Lesh and celebrating what would have been his 85th birthday. Hosted by Graham Lesh and friends, featured Rick, Oteil Burbridge, Eric Krasno, Jennifer Hartswick, Natalie Cressman, and John Molo. Also had some guests hop on stage like Amy Helm, Holly Bowling, Jason Crosby, and John Schofield. So seemed to be a really great event. I tried to tune in for at least pieces on Friday and Saturday. I don't know if you got to check it out as well, Alex, or had any thoughts on that pretty awesome event.
Yeah, and I watched both nights that Rick was there. Just want to shout out real quick. There's going to be 2 more nights with other musicians featured. Like I believe Warren Haynes is playing, a handful of other artists. They're going to be rotating in, accompanying Graham Lesh. But it was super cool seeing Rick kind of just do his thing with such talented musicians. Was really, really fun to watch. And I think the cherry on top was watching him geek out on stage with John Schofield, like his noted hero in the guitar world. And it was just terrific. We posted a few clips on our socials of the event, but I just wanted to shout it out that it's well worth a watch, and all of it's up on Nugs for anyone who wants to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Floored by the Schofield appearance. You know how much that means to Rick, so that was super cool. And I also thought that he maybe let loose a little bit on guitar more than he typically has at some of these events that he's done, because obviously he's participated in a ton of Dead events, but he seemed really loose and free up on stage, which was really cool.
Yeah, and he got featured a little more than he has in the past at these events. So he sang some stuff he's done before, like Cold Rain and Snow, Tennessee Jed, but he also did Help on the Way Again. And last night, at the time of this recording, the 15th, he sang Althea, which is incredible. So really, really cool stuff to watch. I could not suggest it enough. I think night 2 really came together even better than night 1, too. So if you have to pick one, I would pick night 2 for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They were finding their footing a little bit on night 1, but all cylinders last night for sure. And then a couple other news and notes here. Goose also released night 1 and night 2 of Milwaukee at the time of this recording. So Alex kind of alluded to this on our previous episode. Why not just give us the whole winter tour? We're pretty much there at this point. But yeah, they just continue to be the best band out there as far as just treating their fans. So even if you don't have Nugs at this point, you can see pretty much all the best shows from that winter run, which is just absolutely outstanding. I know I watched night 2 over the weekend because I was kind of tipsy and don't remember a whole ton of it from the live experience, but I don't know if you got to check them out as well, Alex.
I was watching Unbroken Chain, but I will be watching night 2 for sure. And then night 1 debuts tonight as we're recording this, so it'll be exciting to watch that as well. But yeah, they've released 6 shows now from this winter tour out of 8. They might as well just release Toronto too and just call it a day, because don't want to leave those shows out.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm kind of expecting it. And I mean, it's just so on brand for them that they're just like, hey, here's our whole tour for free on YouTube. It's just typical Goose being awesome. And then just a couple other things from the fan side of the community. El Goose Times announced that their upcoming Volume 13 is going to be released in tandem in late May with the start of the summer tour. And this volume includes interviews with producer D. James Goodwin, of course, the producer for Dripfield, as well as the upcoming Everything Must Go, and also with the illustrator, Brian Blomerth, who designed the Everything Must Go album cover, which if you have not seen that cover somehow at this point, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. But seems like it's going to be a really exciting issue. Obviously, looking forward very much to hearing what D. James Goodwin thinks about this album and how he looked at the whole recording process. But yeah, a lot to look forward to in this upcoming issue, it seems like.
Yeah, and they kind of previewed it over at the El Goose Times that he'll go track by track and kind of talk through stories from each. So really excited for this one.
Definitely. It never disappoints. And the very last piece of news is that our friends over at AAT completed their Jam of the Year bracket for 2024, of course, and Philly Tumble from The Man on June 28th, 2024 was crowned the winner. Alex, I know you were
Hell yeah.
there, and I know pretty much all of last year you were in my ear about how amazing that jam was, so I'm sure it's pretty satisfying for you to see it crowned the champion.
Oh, it was always going to be the winner. It was inevitable. But yeah, we had to shout it out with how often we throw out the term Jam of the Year, and they do a great job over at AAT. So congrats to the Philly Tumble.
Absolutely. Obviously, a huge influence on us. And so now we're all teed up. We're going to get into the flow down this week, which, of course, is Luna Luna. And this was another show that you were fortunate enough to be at, Alex. So for those that don't know, just a little bit of background. Luna Luna was originally an art amusement park created by Andre Heller that was put together in 1987 in Hamburg, Germany. Shout out to my year of birth. Heller commissioned several of the biggest artists of the time, including Salvador Dali, Sonia Delany, David Hockney, and Keith Haring, among many others. And all of these works of art were also actual rides at the time. And the park was running for about 7 weeks before it was dismantled and stored away for over 3 decades, wasting away in storage containers in Texas. And it was rediscovered in 2022 by Drake. Yes, the rapper Drake, and announced that his production company Dream Crew was restaging a more limited version of the Lost Carnival, and they invested over $100 million in the project. And it opened in LA, which I think I mentioned on the last episode, but then they moved it to the Shed in New York in 2024 November. And so it just had its last day open on March 16th, 2025. So anything you want to get into just like about Luna Luna overall here, Alex, like what your thoughts were on like the setup and like anything that you could see from outside? Like what was it like waiting outside the venue? Like what was the atmosphere like?
So really, really cool backstory to this, which made it all the more exciting that Goose announced they were going to be doing an event here at the Shed for the new exhibit in New York. And yeah, we basically, I showed up a little bit early to New York City. I was doing some work up in North Jersey, so an easy train ride across the way, and met up at a fan event at the Bronx Brewery right around the corner in Hudson Yards, and got to meet up with a bunch of fellow fans. And there was tons of chatter about how this was going to be an incredible night, and it was such a tough ticket, so people still searching for singles and things like that. And the news had come out earlier in the day that only about 800 people were going to get in the door. So it was really, really just kind of super exciting hype. And people left the Bronx Brewery a little bit before doors to go line up for Luna Luna. And as you're waiting in line, there was a handful of these actors waiting along with us, dressed up as some of the characters from the front of the new EMG album art, including people like B that was running around and playing games with people where you could like toss a hoop onto his tail stinger thing, and a hippie offering the miracles for 15% off from the album cover. And then also Mr. Milo Thatch himself, who had a notebook that he was asking people to write inspirational quotes in, which turned out to be even a bigger part of the exhibit later on in the night. So they kept you entertained while you're waiting in line. And yeah, it was really, really awesome just to kind of like interact with so many fans. I met our buddy Dean, for instance, from Breakfast with Rabelo for the first time in line. So it was like I just got to meet a ton of people, and it was a good time all around.
Yeah, I mean, any of my handful of friends that were there, everyone was definitely talking about how like the vibes and everything started before you go into the venue. Like outside the venue was just as exciting and just as kind of like innovative as the rest of the event. So that sounds absolutely incredible, and so glad obviously that you got to, you know, mingle with a lot of people from the community and have that fun together. What about any thoughts as far as like your initial entrance into the venue? Like what did it feel like? What did you first see? Like how are you kind of greeted to this experience as you're kind of first making your way through the doors?
So we got let in actually a couple minutes early before doors, and they let you kind of wander the first floor where it was the entryway. They had the merch set up on one side, there was a bar on the other side, and it was cool. They let us in a couple minutes early to go check out the merch everyone was super hyped for. all the staff was dressed up as like the Rainbow Kid from the front of the EMG cover with the spinny helicopter hats and colorful rainbow outfits. And Goose had announced earlier in the day that they had upcycled some thrifted shirts and printed the EMG Experience logo on them to create these like one of one unique shirts that were upcycled, and it was cool. And they all had receipt tags on them, like not really receipt tags, but they were all signed by all the members of the band. And yeah, tons of great merch to pick from along with that thrifted stuff. And right next to the merch stand was a stand for Viva El Gonzo, manned by the hardworking staff at Primavera Tours, for anyone who watched that hilarious reel that they put together promoting Viva El Gonzo. But yeah, once you kind of got your fill of the merch and interacting with the guys over there at the Viva El Gonzo stand, you grab yourself a drink if you wanted, and then go line up to go up to the art exhibit that started on the second floor of the shed. And as soon as you entered in there, you're immediately hit in the face with the experience. So you're greeted by a huge ensemble of all the characters from the album art. Like, I walked in and immediately the leopard girl on the roller skates who's listening to like a tape player from the front of the album, she comes up to you and she pops her headphones on your head, and you're listening to Redbird from the album for a couple seconds before you kind of have to hand it off to the next person. There was like a photo booth where you could get your picture taken with the EMG artwork in the background, and just kind of like a nice souvenir for having seen the experience. There was a big glass maze that you could walk into that was designed by Roy Lichtenstein. And it was a glass maze that I got lost in, like, because I was trying to film it. And then, of course,
Always wise.
the big thing that hits you in the face when you walked in that first room was the painted carousel by Keith Haring. We posted a picture of it on our socials, and he had two huge panels of character-filled artwork on either side of that as well. You could read all about some of this incredible art. And once you kind of had your fill of interacting with all the characters and looking at all the art and reading about it, you could walk through the entrance archway for the original amusement park that was designed by Sonia Delani and go into the main room of the exhibit where you could see the stage that was set up for Goose. And it was surrounded by some of the big iconic artwork that you see when you see pictures of Luna Luna, if you're reading articles and things like that, like the painted swing chair ride by Kenny Scharf, the carousel by Jean-Michel Basquiat, and the big enchanted tree by David Hockney. Those are all really cool to kind of wander around and explore. You also could like wander into a wedding chapel if you were lucky enough to be there with your partner and get married at Luna Luna and get a marriage certificate. You could just really get lost in there. But the big thing, as soon as you walked through that archway, is you were hit in the face with, there was a DJ up on stage, on a side stage, playing remixed versions of songs from EMG. So you're getting snippets of lines from like Animal and Redbird, and the most noteworthy one I heard while I was wandering around was a couple lines from Your Direction. So really exciting to kind of hear those previews, but it was all like EDM mixed, like dancey versions of them. And as you continued wandering around, there was a room where you could go listen to a vinyl spinning and you could get a sneak peek of the record. But when I wandered over there, I was kind of late to the game, and there's tons of people in there, and there's noise bleed from all the talking and the remix music and all that. I was like, you know what? I'll just experience the album with everybody else, but really cool for everyone who got to kind of get a sneak peek of the album. And hopefully you got to hear songs like Dustin Hoffman and Iguana Song before everyone else. But super, super cool. And you could really get lost in there just wandering around and immersing yourself in all this incredible artwork, along with even more characters. Like, it was like all the characters from the front of the album, and all the actors were just crushing it. It really truly was an immersive experience. If you allowed yourself to get lost in it, like, you felt like you're part of the front of the album cover.
Yeah, and just more further evidence that like Goose just does not half-ass anything. They go 1,000,000% committed on just every idea, and it was just so cool and surreal to see, like from the pictures that you shared, and of course like other listeners and fans on social media. Just, I mean, obviously that's a very busy album cover, and to have so much of it represented tangibly at the actual exhibit, not to mention like the environment that you're seeing our favorite band in includes like a carousel and a Ferris wheel. Like, I mean, it's just absolute insanity. So obviously this experience was on another level from any other Goose show, but do also want to get a little bit into the music here. What did like the show itself sound like or feel like? Because everyone's told me that it was different than any Goose show musically has ever been. So I'm sure everyone at home that hasn't heard any clips or seen any video would love to just get your impression of like what was this one time only set like?
So it was really a unique space, like I had said before. This quote unquote stage, which really was just like a platform, circular platform in the middle of all of this art, was surrounded by stacks, so you could hear all the music and these like pole lights. And there really wasn't like an entryway into the stage, so everyone's kind of wondering like how Goose was going to get on stage. After I kind of wandered around a bit, I kind of found a spot with some new friends, kind of close to the enchanted tree part of the exhibit, right behind Peter. And you could see when you looked on the stage, like, oh, this is a really tight circle formation, and the equipment's much more limited than what you get at a full Goose show. So less pedals for Trevor and Rick, smaller drum kit for Cotter, and then just a handful of keyboards for Peter. And the band came on about 8:30, and like I mentioned, because there was no actual true entrance into the stage, all the guys were dressed up as characters with these outfits that were covering their faces, and they're just kind of standing among the crowd and then slowly like worm their way up front and snuck into the circle. Rick was a werewolf, Mr. Silver Rising himself. Peter and the special guest for the night, Stuart Bogey, were monkeys. Trevor, I think he was one of the characters from the front of the album, like the wizard otter, I guess it is. Everyone's been calling it an otter, so I'll call it an otter too. And Cotter was a lion, and they got settled for a couple seconds on stage and then immediately started easing in to some TED Tape style jams, instant improv, and it was really cool to watch them all kind of work and see them kind of interacting with their eyes and their body language to kind of move things along. So got to see a bunch of different jam styles throughout. And the most immediately notable thing, I guess, in your face thing was Stuart Bogey, who was playing the sax and the clarinet, by the way. I didn't mention that up front. He and Rick just had this instant chemistry, like interplaying, trading lead riffs from each other. And I just immediately noted that the chemistry was really strong between the two of them. And there isn't an official release of this yet, but I do want to shout out again, sorry, Scatterbrain, because there was so much to it, that our friend of the pod, Sim Turner, he and his wife recorded the full thing off of an Apple Watch, and it actually sounds pretty good. If you want to go check out the full recording of the 80-minute long jam on community.wisterialane.org, it's up there. But yeah, I could talk through the jam for a little bit if you want, Mike.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, we'd all like as many details as you can remember. I mean, I definitely am going to be checking out that audio recording here shortly. But I think that for a lot of us in the Goose community, this kind of like fulfills a dream come true as far as like just having them perform like a straight improv set. And I think it's really neat that, the last TED tapes, a lot of that was based on, initial jam sessions with Cotter as he was auditioning for the band. So I think it's really cool, and I can't wait to hear the whole thing as far as just to, having heard and spent so much time with the 2024 TED tapes, now that they all have so much more chemistry, have been playing together as a unit for such a long time. I'm very curious to, like what a TED tape style jam sounds like them now with like a year of growth under their belts.
You can hear like how much more comfortable they all are playing together now. I mean, people will say that it didn't go to places that they wanted it to go for a long time, but I thought that they hit some really cool soundscapes throughout the hour, 20 minutes or so, and kind of started off slow and kind of let the music take them wherever they wanted to go. And kind of started off, like I said, in a slower space, really flowy, ascending riff by Rick. And it took us into this like kind of like low key groove that was really really nicely accompanied by Stuart Bogey on the sax. And yeah, the way they were playing off each other was just outstanding early on. And Peter decides, let's start moving this thing along. So he's playing this like those like old Tinker Toy like piano style like things that you can get for small
Yeah.
children. It sounded like that, and that kind of was the
Wow.
stimulus to like move the jam a little bit. and this kind of crashing waves vibe that was similar to what we heard in Grand Rapids started up with some accompanying vocals for the first time by Rick in the background, him doing some of those like auto-tuned effect O's in the back. And he started going into this "We Don't Want to Be Weightless" segment. It's like super cool, like trancey psychedelic space. We posted a clip of that. I grabbed a clip of that where I could, and it was awesome. And we came to find out later on that the lines that Rick was using were the lines that people wrote in Milo Thatch's notebook while you're waiting in line or around the exhibit, and he was just kind of like finding the ones he wanted to say the most. But coming off that psychedelic space, we hit some bluesier, sharp rock with some nice marimba by Peter, and then get into full Rick shred mode, break down into a more floating meditative space at one point, really calming. Sounded like it could be the jam on 726. I think that's right about when we got the "I just came for the zip line" quote from "I Think You Should Leave."
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And all the while throughout this jam, I forgot to mention, the artwork is kind of in the background and lit up. But, like, for instance, the carousel started spinning at one point. The swing started spinning at one point, and Getty's kind of working the lights on them, and just like, it's just adding to the ambiance of the room. And yeah, the jam kind of like hit peaks, broke down, hit peaks, broke down, and then towards the end, we got into this really cool, like, classic rock, 70s style psychedelic space that just exploded into this like dark jam that I wanted to live in for like another hour, 20 minutes. But they ended on the absolute highest of highs on this thing. And it was just like the most energy you saw through the night. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. I wish we could live here forever. But everyone looked at their watches and were like, oh, it's almost 10 o'clock and the exhibit has to close. But the crowd, like for 800 people, that was a really loud response, I feel like, too. Incredible dark jam to close this thing out. And just seeing all the art moving along with the band, kind of like moving and flowing, like Getty is a wizard and somehow managed to make the experience even crazier than what the ambience the room was offering already. So I cannot suggest highly enough. Hopefully the band releases a full like video production of this, because there was tons of cameras everywhere for this thing, including a spinning camcorder type of thing in the middle of their circle. So they have to release some kind of YouTube video, I think.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that was going to be one of my questions for you was there a dark segment? Because obviously we talked about it ad nauseum, but Winter Run was particularly notable for great dark jams. So glad to hear that momentum's continuing. They've played with horn players before, and I feel like it always goes really well. I feel like they always have amazing chemistry with horn sections when they bring them in. So that's also really neat to hear. And then to your last point, I have been telling anyone that talks to me about Goose regularly, I would probably be willing to bet a large sum of money that this will end up on YouTube in some form. I don't know if they're going to like release the entire 80-minute set, but I would imagine that there's going to be at least like a 25-minute shortened down recap or something like that that's going to get released. It's too impactful of an event and too special, and I feel like this moment needs to be commemorated forever, for sure.
Oh yeah, well said. And I have a feeling they're going to release the full thing. It's just such like a cool ride, and really, really tough to be able to describe it for folks who either weren't in the room or like don't have the ability to really watch and listen. So I'm really hoping it comes out at some point. But I know there was a lot of folks asking like for what happened at Luna Luna. We want to know more about it, and we just are trying to cover as much as we can as soon as we can. But there was so much to take in. It's like overwhelming almost to talk about all the different aspects of the night.
Yeah, probably not a perfect way to put this into a nice and tidy synopsis for everyone at home, but hopefully we get to at least most of the main key points about this really special evening. But with all that being said, any like overall final parting thoughts or just high level takeaways from the event and your experience there?
You kind of said it really well in the middle of the episode. It's just that when Goose has an idea for something unique to bring to their fan base, they go all in, and this was a really, really great encapsulation of that. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this in terms of going to a musical event, and we've seen incredible Goose misses and themed shows and things like that, but this was a whole different animal, no pun intended. And to be in the room amongst so much great art was really inspiring. And, you know, some of the greatest artists of the time when Luna Luna was first developed in the 80s. And just to kind of feel like you're in the room with like the ghosts of such greatness is just outstanding while you're listening to your favorite band play something unique that will never get played again. So it was really just a awe-inspiring kind of event, and feel very fortunate I was able to scoop a last-minute ticket, because I know people were like desperate and looking on StubHub at like $1,500 tickets and things like that, and they were just hard to come by. So feel very, very fortunate that I could go and represent the pod, and really wish that you could have come with me.
Yeah, I really wish I could have been there. Obviously, seeing it now in retrospect, I know that I missed out on something truly special, but I'm super glad that you got to go, obviously, buddy. And I'm grateful for everything I've gotten to see from the event. And to anyone at home, like if you're ever on the fence about going to a special event for Goose, like I cannot recommend it highly enough. Like whether it's Goosemas, Halloween, if you're going to Viva El Gonzo, I mean, if you're going to something that they're putting a lot of extra effort into, it's going to go above and beyond any expectations you could possibly have. So anytime something like this comes up and you're on the fence, buy the freaking ticket.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, they announced this thing like 2 hours before the tickets went on sale, and it sold out in a flash. So
Yeah.
Goose is blowing up in the best kind of way, and I hope to see more events like this. I have to imagine Viva El Gonzo will have a lot of special stuff like this as well. And real quick, if you are interested in any of the merch, I saw that some of it's still up on Goose's website, so you can get some of the exclusive merch from this event. It's all really cool and really high quality, and I couldn't help myself. I am kind of a slut for merch, so I had to get myself another hoodie out of like the 50 bajillion I have. And yeah, so if you are dying for something EMG, it's up on their site.
Yeah, there's a couple things left on there. I will say they are selling out ridiculously quick. I think the hats are already gone. I grabbed a couple of those. So if you are interested, I would recommend getting on there. If there were a few things when I checked this morning, but obviously with how special this was, they're going to sell really quickly. So, but that about wraps up this episode for Luna Luna. And thank you so much for tuning in. Really just grateful for the support as always. Stay tuned. We have a lot of great episodes, some of which are already being finished right now, coming your way. So definitely, as always, be sure to follow us on socials. And thank you again so much.
Thanks for listening to us improv like Goose just did at Luna Luna, guys. Last minute episode. Appreciate it.